It was just another busy Monday morning on the top floor of the glass tower that housed Everhart Enterprises, a company known across the country for its innovation and wealth. The boardroom buzzed with energy. Executives in tailored suits passed charts and argued over projections. Nathan Everhart, the company's founder and CEO, sat at the head of the long table, his eyes focused but distant. He was a man of numbers, structure, and control, a man who had built an empire from nothing, yet had grown used to the silence that came with power. His assistants kept tight control over who entered that space, especially during board meetings. But then, without warning, the massive double doors creaked open. A quiet hush fell over the room. Every head turned. Standing there, just barely tall enough to reach the door handle, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her dress was wrinkled, her hair tied into 2 uneven ponytails, and in her tiny hand, she clutched a scruffy old teddy bear whose seams had long since split. Her shoes were mismatched and too big, and her cheeks were flushed with nervousness. She stepped forward slowly, her small voice somehow piercing through the room, louder than any executive's pitch had managed. "Excuse me," she said. "Where can I buy a dad?" No one moved. No one spoke. Nathan blinked. At first, he wondered if this was some kind of prank, a publicity stunt, a social experiment. But the sincerity in the girl's eyes froze him where he sat. "Can I buy a dad here?" she repeated, more softly this time, as if afraid she had interrupted something important. "I have money in my piggy bank." One of the executives stood, trying to escort her out, but Nathan held up a hand. "Wait." He rose from his chair, his 6-foot frame slowly walking toward the child like a man waking from a long sleep. He knelt beside her, his voice lower now, no longer that of a CEO commanding a room. "Why do you want to buy a dad?" he asked gently. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and honest. "Because my mummy cries every night, and I heard daddies make everything better." The room remained frozen in stunned silence, the kind that follows something too pure, too raw, to be met with immediate response. The executives glanced at one another, some awkwardly adjusting their ties, others shifting in their seats, unsure of what to do or say. This wasn't a situation covered in any corporate training. It wasn't a PR crisis or a market downturn. It was a child, and her question had broken every wall they were used to hiding behind. Nathan stayed kneeling, still at eye level with the girl. She smelled faintly of soap and crayons, and her eyes held a kind of sadness that didn't belong on someone so small. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she whispered. He smiled gently. "Lily, how did you get in here?" She pointed down the hallway. "The lady at the front said I couldn't go up, but when she was talking on the phone, I just walked fast. I needed to ask now before someone else buys one." Nathan's throat tightened, but he tried to keep his voice steady. "Why do you think you need to buy a dad?" Lily clutched her teddy bear closer to her chest. "Because mummy works all the time now. She's tired, and sometimes she cries when she thinks I'm asleep. She says grown-up stuff like bills and rent and how hard everything is without my daddy. But I saw on TV that people buy things they need in big buildings. So I came here. I thought maybe rich people sell dads." Her words were simple, but they hit Nathan like a punch to the heart. One of the junior executives cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Should we call security, or maybe social services?" Nathan didn't answer. He was staring at Lily like he had seen a ghost. Because 8 years ago, his own daughter, Emily, had been just about Lily's age. She used to hold her teddy bear the same way. She used to look at him with those same big, trusting eyes. And then, she was gone, along with her mother, in a winter accident he never recovered from. Nathan slowly stood and turned to the others. "Cancel the rest of the meeting," he said quietly. The entire room blinked in disbelief. "But sir," I said, "cancel it." And then he turned back to Lily. "Would you like some juice and cookies?" While we talked, Lily sat quietly in the executive lounge, her legs swinging above the polished floor as she held a juice box with both hands. A plate of cookies rested beside her, barely touched. Her teddy bear sat propped in her lap, its button eyes watching the room with the same quiet patience she did. A kind assistant kept her company, trying to make her smile with gentle conversation. But her eyes kept drifting toward the door, waiting for the man who had actually listened. Back in his office, Nathan stood alone by the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the city. From this height, the world looked small, like everything could be controlled, contained, managed. But Lily's question had reminded him that not everything in life could be organized into charts or solved with a spreadsheet. He rubbed his eyes and leaned his forehead against the glass. Memories he had spent years trying to forget came rushing back like a storm. The sound of Emily's laughter in the backyard, The way she insisted on mismatched socks, her last drawing still folded in his wallet of their family under a bright yellow sun. He had buried himself in work after losing them, thinking maybe if he built something big enough, successful enough, it would fill the hole left behind. But now he realized how empty success felt when no one waited for you at home. How sharp loneliness became when disguised in luxury. He had built an empire, yes, but in doing so he had also built walls, high ones, thick ones, and now, a little girl with tangled hair and a broken teddy bear had walked right through them. He looked down at his desk, where a photo of Emily still sat in a simple frame. He hadn't changed it in years. The glass had a small crack in the corner. He touched it gently, then looked toward the door. There were decisions that came with deadlines, and there were decisions that came with heartbeats. Nathan stepped away from the window and headed for the lounge. Lily looked up as he entered, her face lighting up with quiet hope. He sat beside her, not as a CEO, not as a man who had built fortunes, but as someone who understood loss, and maybe, just maybe, was ready to rediscover love. Nathan learned more about Lily and her mother over the next few days than he had learned about most people in years. Rachel worked long hours at 2 different jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. After her husband died from cancer 2 years ago, she had been doing everything alone, stretching herself thin to pay rent, buy groceries, and make sure Lily never felt like something was missing. But kids always know. Even when parents try their best to hide the cracks, love doesn't always fill the silence left behind by someone who used to be there. Nathan didn't write them a check. He didn't offer them charity. That wasn't what Lily had come looking for. What she needed couldn't be bought, so he gave something else his time. He showed up at their apartment with bags of groceries, insisting it was just extra from his pantry. He helped Rachel fix a leaking faucet and tightened the loose hinges on their old kitchen cabinet. He read bedtime stories to Lily, the kind with dragons and silly voices, and even let her teach him how to braid her doll's hair. On Saturdays, he took them to the park, where Lily would run ahead and shout back facts she had memorized from her picture books. Sometimes Rachel joined them, sitting on the bench, her laughter slowly returning with every passing weekend. There was no big announcement, no plan. It all unfolded naturally. Nathan found himself rearranging meetings, turning down events he used to prioritize, just so he could walk Lily to school or help her with her drawings. His assistant joked that he was becoming unpredictable, but Nathan didn't care. For the first time in years, his days had meaning beyond profit and deadlines. At night, when he sat alone in his penthouse, the silence no longer felt heavy. Instead, it felt peaceful, because now he knew that someone out there was waiting for him to show up, not for a meeting, not for a merger, but simply because they liked him being around, because he mattered to them, and strangely, for the first time in a long time, that was enough. One sunny Sunday afternoon, the air was filled with the sound of laughter and the scent of blooming flowers as Nathan sat on a picnic blanket in the park with Rachel and Lily. The city buzzed in the background, but here, in this small patch of green, everything felt still. Lily was twirling in the grass, her teddy bear now patched and cleaned, tucked under one arm like a trusted companion. Rachel sat beside Nathan, watching her daughter dance under the sun with a smile that hadn't been there just weeks ago. There was a calm between them, unspoken but warm. Nathan leaned back on his hands, letting the breeze touch his face. He watched Lily, her joy radiating through every movement, and he felt something stir inside his chest. It wasn't just happiness, it was purpose. A feeling he thought he had lost the night he buried his own daughter. But here it was, slowly, growing back piece by piece. Lily ran over and dropped into his lap, giggling. Her cheeks were pink, her eyes bright with that unshakable innocence only children carry. She looked up at him with a smile that could melt even the coldest heart. "You know," she said softly, "you don't have to buy a daddy." Nathan blinked, caught off guard by her words. "You just have to be one." Time seemed to pause around. Then Nathan looked into her eyes and saw something deeper than gratitude. He saw trust, love, and the kind of bond that no contract could ever create. His throat tightened, and before he could stop them, tears welled up in his eyes. Not the sharp, silent kind he was used to holding back, but the full, heavy kind that had waited years to be released. He wrapped his arms around Lily and held her close, her tiny frame pressed against his chest. Rachel wiped a tear from her own cheek, her hand resting gently on Nathan's shoulder. In that moment, they weren't 3 people broken by life's unfairness. There was something whole, something new. Nathan didn't speak. He didn't need to. In Lily's simple words, everything had been said. He hadn't saved them. They hadn't saved him. And from that day forward, he never walked through life alone again.